Warm greetings to you from the highlands of Papua New Guinea. It is a real privilege to be able to share with the Global Forum how the Lord is pruning, shaping, redirecting, and ultimately pouring out His blessing on the work of Mission Aviation Fellowship here in Papua New Guinea. PNG is truly a textbook example of why mission aviation exists. The indigenous population of PNG is one of the most heterogeneous in the world. Ethnically and linguistically, it is the world's most complex nation, with about 1,000 people groups speaking approximately 830 languages, or 20% of the world's total. PNG's cultures have been molded by geography, successive waves of migration, sorcery, fear, and warfare. Accordingly, PNG has several thousand separate communities, many with only a few hundred people, divided by language, customs, and incredibly challenging geography. Many of these remote peoples are only accessible by days upon days of walking, in some cases rivers, or more reasonably, aircraft. The work of MAF in PNG began on the 7th of May, 1951. Now, 70 years later, MAF has the prestigious honor of being the longest continually serving air operator in the country. Throughout those 70 years, the gospel has been shared, the work of international missions and the local church has been supported, churches, health centers, and schools have been built, disasters responded to, education and health services provided, micro-enterprises such as trade stores encouraged, and local agriculture and farmers nurtured beyond mere subsistence levels. MAF operations supported these activities by transporting people, building materials, and trade store products into these remote communities and taking agricultural produce such as coffee and peanuts to markets in regional centers. Since 1951, the program has grown from one initial Oster Aerocar launching from Madang to a peak in the late 1980s to early 1990s of 17 aircraft of multiple types, with more than 30 pilots operating from 12 bases. But as we know, the one constant anywhere is change. After PNG's independence in 1975, international missions and organizations gradually began handing over their activities to local leadership. Many of these local organizations lacked the financial resources that had been formerly available through the missionaries. In the 1990s, airlines around the world began to blossom, and the pool of experienced pilots and engineers who were available or willing to join MAF began to decline. This meant that the complex nature of MAF's operations in PNG, with the multiple aircraft types, training pathways, inventories, fuels, and engineering requirements, needed to be seriously considered. Following a fleet review in 2015, and thanks to the sacrifice of the MAF International family, the PNG program began a transition from 4 types of aircraft to a single Cessna 208 Caravan fleet. Today, the program is operating 10 Caravans, serving more than 190 airstrips from 5 main bases and 6 minor bases. Our in-country team is comprised of some 100 national full-time staff and 36 international job holders from 13 nations, representing 114 expatriates in total. We have 17 international and 1 PNG national pilot. About the same time as the fleet was being reviewed, the PNG program was developing a 4-year strategic plan that was intended to cover the period from 2016 to 2020. This plan called for increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of our ministries and improving the staff engagement within the program. Embracing the strategic plan, in 2017, a burning question began to come to the surface. After 66 years of MAF service in PNG, where could we demonstrate communities that had been spiritually and physically transformed because of MAF's presence in the country? To answer this question, it would require that with intentionality, we would begin to strategically focus our efforts on the gaps and greatest needs. I often have used an analogy from firefighting with our team. We don't attack a forest fire with a bucket of water here or one there, but we find the front of the fire and drop multiple loads of retardant to stop the fire. We focus our efforts on achieving the task at hand. And so, under the visionary leadership of Surgeon Dr. Varghese Philip, otherwise known as VP, we began to look intentionally at areas across Papua New Guinea where we could make significant impact. We met with Dr. David Mills, the medical superintendent of Enga Baptist Health Services, otherwise known as Compium Hospital. I'll never forget that meeting. We met in my office in November of 2017, and said, David, if we were to come alongside you as MAF and help you make lasting physical and spiritual impact in the Enga and East Sepik areas, what would that look like? David looked at his feet and said, we're struggling already. I can't afford MAF. And I said, David, forget about the money. If MAF were to come alongside you, how could you truly reach the people of the East Sepik and Enga areas? Dr. Mills began to outline how he had 9 communities and how it took him several days to walk to and from each community. How there was a desperate need, but he just couldn't get to them on a regular basis. There weren't enough days in the year. And so a plan was drafted. 9 airstrips every quarter, drop off a medical team, come back 2 days later and pick the team up. 18 flights a quarter, 72 flights a year. Our MAF PNG budget was already in significant deficit. Could we do this? No, we couldn't. But God could, and that is exactly what happened. Unexpected funding sources were developed, additional back charters were requested, and after our first year of successful Compium Health Patrol flights, our subsidy account was hardly touched. The Lord had provided. But this was just the beginning. As we were executing on the Compium Health Patrols, Dr. VP was dreaming of HARC, Healthcare Access to Remote Communities, a project similar to Compium where we could begin delivering regular preventive care, immunizations, water health and sanitation training to some of the most remote and under-accessed communities along PNG's border with Indonesia. After several permutations and engagement with the Sustainable Development Program Limited of PNG, Aerial Health Patrols was established in July of 2019. This partnership has now resulted in the purchase of 2 additional Cessna 208 aircraft for delivery of the health initiatives, providing service to 34 airstrips with 4 medical teams, with the ultimate goal of 72 airstrips and 12 teams by the end of 2023. New initiatives, new impact, new airplanes, a renewed vision and purpose, the program was starting to make exponential growth. But what we realized we needed most was to focus on our foundation, our spiritual foundation. Our morning devotional times were enhanced. A weekly Power Hour prayer time was established where we meet each Friday to pray for the program and the needs of MAF across the world. Prayer and fellowship times were being encouraged across our bases, and we had a common thrust. We can't do this, but God can. We recognized that one of our greatest areas of need was in the town of Mount Hagen. This was and is a serious area of spiritual darkness. We began to plan for a 3-day evangelistic outreach event to start on the 15th of November, 2019. Tents were brought in, events for youth were planned for the days, and music, preaching, and videos for the evenings. As we opened the event that afternoon, the report came in that P2 MAI, one of our new caravans, had landed at a remote strip, entered a soft spot with a resultant prop strike. This event was followed in quick succession by another landing accident on the 14th of February 2020, and then again on the 19th of March. While I'm not someone who sees a demon behind every bush, I can't help but wonder about the timing. As we made prayer the priority and focused on a spiritual outreach in one of the darker towns of the country, we got hit in rapid succession. On the evening of the 19th of March, the program was stood down, and just a couple of days later, the country entered into a COVID-19 lockdown, wherein nearly all domestic flying was restricted. The spiritual battle was fierce. But we are truly praising the Lord through it all. It is impossible to see a rainbow if you don't first have some rain and clouds. Over the course of the next several months, the PNG and MAF global teams came together to work through border restrictions, airstrip surveys and assessments, Accident Investigation Commission requirements, pilot reassessments, and finally, a restart of the program. I can unarguably say that the MAF PNG program is in a stronger position than it has been in for years. The stand down, reassessment, internal reflection, renewal of our purpose and vision, and restart has brought us to a new day. In June, we underwent the Civil Aviation Regulators Flight Operations Safety Audit. Some operators get 6 months validity, some get 2 to 3 years. We received a 4-year validity to our 119 operation specifications. The audit team was hard-pressed to find anything of significance after their week of auditing. In August, we received an unannounced visit by an accredited Flight Safety Foundation Basic Aviation Risk Standards auditor, engaged by the Sustainable Development Program, our Aerial Health Patrol's partner. This auditor left indicating that the standards and professionalism of MAF in Papua New Guinea exceeded that of many airlines. No major findings. We praise the Lord for His provision through this time, and I want to wholeheartedly recognize and appreciate the PNG Ops and MAF International team who together have tirelessly worked to see this new day of excellence for the PNG program. And so today, the PNG program is forging ahead, 70 years on and still going strong. Together we are focused on the mission of bringing help, hope, and healing to arguably some of the most isolated people in the world. Some of the ways that we are achieving this is through a renewed focus on establishing strong partnerships with key government officials in order to bring focus on the needs of the rural communities and airstrips. These communities represent 80% of the population in PNG. We are actively pursuing new funding sources and partnerships. Currently, we are flying a 100-hour grant funding agreement with the New Zealand High Commission for the delivery of vaccines, health education, and other related health services. The High Commissioner has opened the door for another 300 flight hours. In addition to hosting the New Zealand High Commissioner in July, we also hosted the Australia High Commissioner in August and the U.S. Ambassador in September. We are pitching high-value health and education projects to each of these governments. We have a vision to have 5 high-value flight initiatives operational by the end of this year. As mentioned earlier, we already have Copium Health Patrols in the Enga Province, Aerial Health Patrols in the Western Province. Lutheran Health Patrols have now been established in the Morobe Province, and we're working with the Nazarenes in Jawaka Province and ECPNG Mission in the North Fly to establish similar patrols. Investing in our national team is also a primary focus for us here in the MAF PNG program. In fact, in August of this year, we received national training accreditation for the training that we complete for national staff. NAUI is one of our first Cert 2 accredited trainers, and in September we will be doing another course to add 10 additional trainers to our national accreditation. A vocational training specialist from the UK has been recruited and will be joining us in Q1 of 2022. His focus will be in 2 areas: program safety and facilitation of engineering training courses, helping us grow our number of PNG licensed aircraft maintenance engineers. We are also strengthening the existing relationships with like-minded missions. After our safety stand-down and closure of several airstrips, we still had a need to provide critical health patrols to communities where the airstrips were closed. We reached out to SIL Aviation and entered into a first-of-its-kind in PNG partnership wherein we subcontracted SIL helicopters so that we could provide a one aviation provider solution to our partners. Now, fixed-wing and rotor-wing health patrol flights and medical evacuations are being coordinated through our MAF Operations Center in Mount Hagen. Our partnerships in the past few months have seen the installation of VSAT communications terminals in 28 remote communities in the Western Province and the delivery of 17 tons of school books and educational materials in the Sundown Province. There is no way I could begin to list everyone within PNG and around the world who has made this possible. In 1 Corinthians, Paul describes so well what the global family of MAF is like. We are one body with many members, and all of those members are one in focus, vision, and mission. Each day we are ambassadors for Christ. We are serving together to bring help, hope, and healing to those whom many in the world have forgotten. Thank you again for the opportunity to share how the Lord is at work through Mission Aviation Fellowship here in Papua New Guinea. But I want to remind you, we are only able to serve here on the front lines because you are there sacrificially paying and praying the price. May the Lord bless you as you serve in your respective roles.